Bruchim haba and welcome everyone to a special edition of All Parsha on Parshas Chukas, the Ramban on Parshas Chukas. At the end of the Parsha, we have the episode that Klal Yisrael spoke about HaKadosh Baruch Hu and about Moshe Rabbeinu, and they were attacked by snakes. So the Rebbeinu Shalom tells Moshe, in order to cure the Jewish people, Vayomer Hashem el Moshe, Parak Chaf Aleph Pasuk Ches, Asei lecha saraf v'simai sayal nes. Make a fiery serpent and place it on a pole. V'haya kol hanashuch, and it will be anyone who is bit v'ra oisay v'chai, and he'll see it and live. So the pasuk says, Vayas Moshe nechash nechoshes. Moshe made a copper snake. Why do you make a copper snake? Hashem said, Asei lecha saraf, make a fiery serpent. Hashem didn't tell him what to make it out of. So where did Moshe get this idea that he should make it out of copper? So the Ramban begins by citing Rashi. Loi nemar, loi lasois shel nechoshes. God did not tell Moshe to make it of copper. Elo amar Moshe. But Moshe said, HaKadosh Baruch Hu amar li nachash. God told me, make a snake. Ani eseno shel nechoshes. I'll make it out of copper. Lashon noifel ala lashon. A expression that falls upon an expression. Meaning, if Hashem told me nachash and nechoshes is similar to nachash, I will make it of nechoshes. Lashon Rashi midivei Rabbi Sinuzal. This is the language of Rashi from the words of our sages. However, the Ramban questions this explanation of Rashi. Now, just by way of introduction, what does that mean? The Ramban questions. This is not Rashi's interpretation. These are the words of Chazal. The words of our sages come from the Medrash, and they are based on traditions from Sinai. So how could the Ramban question it and then dismiss it? The answer is, we have to understand what the job of Rashi and the Ramban are. Rashi tells us in Bereshis, Parak Gimel Pasuk Ches, V'ani lo basi elo l'pshutai shel mikra. My job is to tell you the simple explanation of the psukim. The Ramban then feels that if there are certain logical and reasonable questions on Rashi, then the pshat that Rashi gives, although it may be based on Chazal and it may be MS, it may not be pshat. It might not be the simple explanation. And sometimes a simple explanation the Ramban offers from his own intuition and seichel, and are not based on Chazal. But the words of Chazal are certainly true, but they may be a different level of interpretation, namely drush. So Ramban asks, I don't understand what Rashi is saying. Shaharei HaKadosh Baruch Hu hiskar nachash. God never told him to make a snake. He said, make a fiery serpent. Aval datom loymar. But the intention of Chazal was to say, Ki halach Moshe achar shem ha'etzem. The intention of Moshe was to say that, the intention of Chazal was to say that Moshe followed the main name, the essential name of this species, Ashalai. In other words, true, God said make a saraf, but what is a saraf? A saraf is a snake, and therefore Moshe said, if it's a snake, then I will make it out of nachash. I will make it out of nechoshes, lashain, noifel al lashain. It still requires further clarification, because just because nachash and nechoshes sound similar, God said make a snake. So just because copper sounds like the word snake in Hebrew, nachash and nechoshes, therefore why is there any imperative whatsoever? Why is it at all better to make it out of copper? Says Ramban, V'hanir be'inai soid hadavar hazeh. It seems to me the secret of this matter is Kihu midarchei haTorah. It is the way and the path of the Torah. Shekoma aseha nes b'soich nes. All of her ways, all of her pathways are a miracle within a miracle. And that is, Tamid tasir hanezek bamazik. God will remove that which has been damaged. God removes harm with a mazik, with that which causes harm, because that makes it all the more miraculous. Because when the Rebbeinu Shalom makes a miracle, he wants to show clearly that it is his yad and his ability. And therefore God removes nezek with the mazik, usarape hachoili b'machli, and he removes the illness with that which causes illness. Like we mentioned, when the Klal Yisrael arrived at Mara, and the waters were bitter. So the pasuk says, "B'vayoreu Hashem eitz." Hashem instructed him to put wood in it, and the wood was bitter. So why would bitter wood cause the water to become sweet? The answer is, that is how the Almighty operates. He wants to show this is clearly a miracle. So He'll bring sweetness to bitter waters with a bitter stick. V'chein ba melach Elisha b'mayim. Likewise, the salt of Elisha that he threw into the bad waters in Yericho, and he transformed them into drinkable waters. Now, says Ramban, it is known in the ways of remedy, anyone who's bitten by a poison animal, endangers their life merely by looking at that animal, or seeing an image of them. Not only is it dangerous to see, if someone chas v'shalom was bitten by a poisonous animal, not only is it dangerous to look at that species of poisonous animal, it's dangerous to look at a picture, an image of that poisonous animal. Ki neshuche akelav hashayta, one bitten by a rabid dog, v'chein shar habehemos hashaytos, or bitten by any other rabid animal, im yabitu b'mayim. Even if you look in water, yir Elohem sham b'bayas bavuas hakelav ayamazik v'yamusu. He'll see in the water the shadow of the dog or the animal, and they'll die. In other words, if they see merely the image of the animal that bit them in a reflection, they will die. Like it's mentioned in the book of remedies, there's mentioned in the Gemara in Yuma and Daf Pei Daled. Doctors even say, don't say the name of the animal that bit them in their presence. Merely hearing the name will kill them. This is like a psychological phenomenon, that they become so obsessed and anxiety-ridden by the thought and the sight of that animal that don't even say that name of that animal in front of them. Their soul clings to that thought, and does not separate from them at all, until it kills them. They become obsessed with the thought of that animal. It's already been mentioned from a tried and tested phenomenon, one of the wonders of nature. Ki neshucha kelav hashayta, one who was bitten by a rabid dog, after they have gone mad in the illness, im yekubal hashesen shaloi, if you collect as a specimen the urine of such a person, b'chli zechukas, in a glass receptacle, yeirah b'hashesen, they will see in the urine demus gure klavim ketanim, the image of small dogs. That's how intertwined and attached they are to the animal that bit them, that you will see images of that animal in their urine specimen. And if you were to strain the urine, you wouldn't find little dogs in the strainer. And then you could pour the urine back into the glass, and leave it there a little bit, like an hour. You'll see the same images of dogs. This is one of the amazing wonders of a person's psyche, that a person can be psychologically affected and obsessed with a certain thought, that it will create a physiological sensation and reaction, and it will be seen in the person's urine. So now the Ramban continues. Since this is so, the Jews who are bitten by the snake, they should have made a law. Nobody's allowed to look at snakes. They have to avoid a snake at all costs. It should not be mentioned. They shouldn't even think about it. So what does God do? He says, tell Moshe, make an image of a fiery serpent in the eyes of the Jewish people. Moshe says, well, you want to kill them? No, I want to heal them. Moshe says, Kachi darka shel Torah. That is the way of Hashem's miracle, because this is the clearest, most obvious way that this is the yad of Hashem. B'tziva HaKadosh Baruch Hu l'Moshe lasus lahem demus saraf hahu. Hashem commanded Moshe to make the image of that fiery serpent that killed them. Now, the Ramban adds why Moshe made it out of copper. Says the Ramban, it is known that fiery serpents are red-eyed, rachavei harosh, wide-headed, shegufam ke'en hanachoshes b'tzavaram, with their neck sort of copper. Ooh, so if Hashem told Moshe, make a saraf, Moshe cannot find a better way to fulfill making an image of a saraf, bilti sheyasa nechash nechoshes, without making a copper snake, kihu demus nachash saraf. That is the image of a copper fiery serpent. If he made it out of something else, it would only be a snake, and not a fiery serpent. Now, that which Chazal say, that Moshe made it out of nechashas, lashan noifel al lashan, but here the Ramban is saying it wasn't just lashan noifel al lashan. He made it out of copper because a serpent has a coppery look under its neck. The Ramban adds, but as we mentioned, the mere thought of the animal that bit a person can be dangerous. So therefore, since copper, nechosha, sounds like nachash, this will stir up thoughts of that snake and would be, so to speak, counterintuitive in healing the Jewish people, and this would magnify the miracle of Hashem curing Klal Yisrael through this means. That which Chazal say, that Moshe made it out of nechoshes, lashan, noifel lashan, ki askars Hashem bavad tazik, the mere mention of the name alone causes damage. V'haklal, the general principle is, ki tziva Hashem, God commanded, sheyisrapu, b'mazik hamemis, b'teva, that to be cured with that which caused harm and death by nature. Va'asu demusay ushmai, they made it in its image with its name. Adam mabed bekavana, when a person gazed at it with intent. Al nechash hanechoshes, to the coppery serpent. Shu ke'ein hamazik lagamri, which is like the actual mazik. Hayachai, it would live. Lahidiyam, this was to make known ki Hashem Yisbarach Meimis Umachaya. It is the Almighty that brings about one's demise, Umachaya, and brings to life. And there's nothing natural at all, as the Ramban himself says, and the end of Parshas Boy, that the Yisoid of Kol HaTorah Kula is everything in this world are Nisim, Nistarim, Ein Bahem, Teva, Klal. Wishing everyone a wonderful Shabbos, Parshas Chukas, and week ahead. Bracha v'hatzlacha.